this gig because I used to do the Be Healthy, Be Active thing with Jan. And so evidently I have a new PR person. At one of our classes, when Jan introduced me and said she's our gardening person and she's going to talk about gardening, and someone came right up and said, what does gardening have to do with being healthy? And, so the next 25 minutes I spent telling them why, gardening is important to being healthy. How many of you are gardeners already? Good. How many people want to be gardeners? Yay. People really don't want to get their hands dirty and ruin their fingernails, because that is, you will not have fingernails for 8 months out of the year because it just won't happen. Growing your own food has been, through the ages. Once the hunters and gatherers finally settled down, they became farmers and started growing. And in those days, everybody had to grow because they had to grow to eat, So you were either hunting, gathering, or you were growing your own stuff. It became, there's always been gardeners around, but during COVID, it became kind of just everybody got into it because, let's face it, we couldn't find things in the store sometimes. It gave us something to do because a lot of us were stuck at home. We couldn't socialize, so we had to do something. And so gardening was a good way to get involved with all that. Some of the benefits for to digging in the dirt, there's exercise. Granted, you don't think of gardening as a lot of exercise. Oh, yeah, you go out and you throw a little water on, so you throw some seeds in there and you put some water on. Let me tell you, if you've got I've got just a city lot in a Clarkston. I used to have 2 acres in a Soton, and that was not fun. Most of it was in pasture, so it wasn't as hard as it might have been. But I still have a city lot, and it's a good size, but just the weeding is a constant thing. And I'm getting old, and my body is starting to say, whoa, you need to slow down. I have never been a slow down person. So it's taken me some time to realize that I have to do things, some things I can't do, and some things I just have to do slower. But I get down on I can't really get up and down very well, but I found if I have my kitty litter bucket, I can lean on that, and so if you want to do something, you will. And as you get old, it's very important to stay mobile and moving. And the best way to do that, I think, for me, is gardening, because I don't mind getting dirty. They have proved that there's been scientific that when you dig in the dirt and you grow things, it releases something in your body called dopamine, which is the same thing you get from other pleasurable acts. And so it's kind of like you can get high on gardening. Guess that's what happens to me. It improves your diet because you're growing your own food. And we found, especially with the kids at the schools, we do a couple of programs at Grantham and Parkway, and the kids that have never, some of those kids have never seen a garden before, they know nothing. And or maybe they've never seen a radish fresh out of the ground. Maybe they've never seen a radish. Some of these kids are from lower income housing, so suddenly they're getting to grow things, and it's like, hey, you can eat this. Those kids are eating kale and stuff that you would never guess that they would eat, and they are loving it. So if you grow it yourself, you're more likely to eat it than if you're buying it. Because for one thing, when you start planting your garden, don't grow stuff you don't like just because the seeds are there. I'm not big on corn on the cob or corn at all. And, for me to put in a patch of corn would be ridiculous. I get my 1 ear or 2 ears of corn at the farmer's market, and it works fine for me. But there are things that I love that I grow a lot of. One is garlic. I am kind of the garlic queen of Clarkson. I meant to bring garlic today for everybody, but it's really not the right time. Garlic needs to be planted in the fall and then over winters, which is the best way to do it. But I now have, I harvested 150 heads last year, and I have, I believe, 13 different varieties. I'm a little nutso on things. Once I get involved, it's like, whoa, here's another one. And that's what happens to gardeners. You see one plant, and it's so pretty, and so you have to have it. And then you find another plant, and you have to have it. And pretty soon, you don't know where you're going to put the next plant, but you're buying it anyway because you want it. And in the garden, you can also get carried away thinking, oh my gosh, I should grow this or that or something. Yeah, Dylan.
Kind of shocked me there.
You didn't think I recognized it.
All that garlic. I mean, are we going to talk about some of the things that we can do with some of those things that we grow?
Depth at this time, because we don't really have the time. But what I do with all my garlic, I pickle a lot of it. It's very labor intensive, but it's pretty yummy. If you like garlic, and I'm pretty sure you guys would use garlic. There's different flavors depending on the kind it is. Some pickle better than others. Some have a different flavor. I use it in cooking a lot because I love garlic. And garlic is healthy for you. It has lots of antioxidants and stuff that's just really good for your body. So yeah, I do that, and I do give away some. What else do I do? But then I just save ahead to plant for the next year, and of course they'd get online. And we won't get into all the technicalities of garlic. I get really carried away with things like that. Anyway, so your diet will improve if you've got fresh veggies, because if you're cooking, especially in the summer, the last thing you want to do if you're fixing dinner is run to the store to buy vegetables. But if you know you've got, your garden out there, you can just go out there and pick some peppers, and, maybe you've got a cucumber or two, some tomatoes, maybe you've got lettuce. It's usually too hot in the middle of summer here for lettuce because it likes to be cool, but my mind just went on vacation. Anyways, if you like salsa, grow peppers and onions and cilantro if you can get it to grow. I'm a gardener, and yet, can I grow cilantro? Oh, hell no. I've got a plant right now, bought it at the plant sale over Mother's Day weekend. It's like this tall, and it's looking good. We'll just see how long it looks good. Because they want to bolt, they want to go to seed, it's too hot. There's lots of reasons, I suppose, but then you talk to somebody else and, oh no, I have 2 rows of cilantro, it does great. Yeah, well, mine doesn't. So you'll find that, you can get advice from other people, but sometimes you'll find that there's something you're just not gonna have much luck growing. Try different things with it. There's so much information out there now on the computer that you can Google anything. Here's the key though. Don't go to .coms. When the URL has a .com at the end, they're going to try and sell you something. Now, if you don't mind going through all their stuff that they want to sell you, go ahead and go there. And sometimes you can find good information. Wikipedia, it might be the exception to that rule. Wikipedia usually has good information, tells you usually where they got the information, so that if it came from, Professor so-and-so at Princeton, you can probably believe it. But if it was, Grandma Ethel's, old recipe for salsa, maybe you'd steer clear of that. Or look at it, and if it makes sense to you, maybe. But if at one point, when this, I guess it was Facebook first got started, anyway, somewhere on that social web, it had a thing and it said the best way to clean things was to use ammonia mixed with bleach. Yes, exactly. It's like, who, doesn't somebody vet this stuff to keep this? I mean, they're gonna have an explosion. So, when you read something on the internet, it, it could be true, but don't believe it just because it's there. I mean, if it tells you that you can use vinegar to get rid of your weeds, because you don't want to use chemicals. Okay, so what is the vinegar? It's 6% acid. Is that not a chemical? I think it probably is. So you want to know what you're putting, on your garden? Okay, time in nature. Another benefit to, they have also proven, the Japanese have a thing, and I don't remember the Japanese name for it, but it's basically bathing in green or bathing in the forest. And it just means to be in nature so that if you can't garden, if you don't want to garden, find yourself a green space where you can go and sit for a while. The hospital is really good. I know at one point they wanted us to plant some stuff, and they have proved that having gardens around hospitals, people heal better, faster. Let's face it, it makes life better if you can see green instead of gray, as in cement, or black top, or gravel. The green will keep the temperature around your house, if you've got lots of plants, trees especially, will keep your house cooler. There's just so much of a benefit to growing things. And here's a real big surprise. It reduces stress. How many of us would like to reduce stress? I think all of us, yeah. Because stress, now, the biggest thing I ever did to reduce stress was retire. I mean, I had no stress after that. But I worked for the sheriff's office, and I worked in the jail, I worked dispatching, and that's pretty stressful. And that's not even dealing with the prisoners. It was, it was just the people you have to work with, or the whole thing. I mean, it was just stressful. And I'm sure you're dealing with people, and people that don't feel well, and people that don't feel well are cranky. And so you've got to, I know because this is my hospital, and I have been in every department, I think, and the people at this hospital are so nice that you guys do such a good job of dealing with people and people that aren't happy, that, are not feeling well. Again, cranky people. But I think Tri-State has excellent, relationships with their people. They have proven that it will mitigate PTSD. They've done gardening things where they've, in prisons, they've had gardens put in to de-stress the prisoners, that will make it easier to deal with everybody. ADHD recovery, they have proven that working in the garden will help with that. It increases creativity, productivity, and it enhances memory retention. Now, we'll just see how well this works. Again, getting older, your mind just wanders sometimes, and sometimes it forgets to come back. And so I really haven't noticed that. Decreased depression, well, obviously, once the sun comes out and you can be outside, that is the best thing to decrease depression, is just get moving, get outside, do something, and why not garden? It's really something you can do kind of on your own time, because you don't have to have a huge garden. You can have pots. They've got these like plastic, they look like calf barrels. They're about yay big. They're about like $17 up at Home Depot, at Walmart. And I've had some that I've had now for 8 years. and they're still standing up. I mean, they are not brittle. They have and they're out in the full sun all the time. And I have blueberries in a couple of them. I have garlic in one. I have goji berries. Okay, don't ask me what a goji berry looks like because I have no idea. But I do coming up. So there you go. I have a blackberry that refuses to die, but it's not. It's just got this little patch of green. I keep watering it, hoping for a miracle. I think it increases your optimism too. You learn to wait for things. I started some asparagus from seeds this year, and I had done the same thing last year. And the gal at my dentist's office, she and Dr. Perez both had gotten the starts for pads and were growing asparagus. So we've been keeping track of our progress, and so I gave her the rest of my asparagus seeds this year so she can try it. Because, if you can't pass on to somebody else the joys of pulling weeds and, working, I'm making it sound like a lot of fun, isn't it? Yeah, my life is pulling weeds and this year cutting back bushes that got froze out from our giant freeze we had. But they have proven that it enhances self-esteem, which, again, is good for everybody. With the kids, it's really, you teach a kid and he's done something, he can see, look what I did, I planted this seed and it grew. It reduces the effects of dementia. We'll see about that too. Well, I'm not there yet. And it encourages social bonds, so that if you're gardening, if you don't, you live in an apartment maybe, and you don't have any place to put a garden. Again, there's always pots. Pots are good. You can have indoor pots. You can grow your herbs in your kitchen, which is a great idea if you have the room and light enough. Because then, again, just like the garden, if it's there, you will use it. If you have to go to the store and buy a whole bunch of cilantro, what used to happen to me, it doesn't anymore, pretty much, but I would bring it home, I'd use whatever I needed that night, put it in the refrigerator, and 3 weeks later there's cilantro jello in the refrigerator because it's all a mess and you need to throw it out. But if you've got the plant growing there, pick off what you need and then it will just grow some more, but it's there. So chives are a good thing to grow in your kitchen. Chives, and then and cilantro, parsley, green onions you can grow in your kitchen. So there's a lot of stuff in your kitchen. If your deck is right off your kitchen, mine is, then I can grow stuff on my deck, which is available to the, when I'm cooking and I don't have to go clear out to the end of the yard to get my stuff. Because, sometimes it's more than I can deal with.
You go to the community garden that's behind Walla Walla Community College?
And I was going to bring that up. If you don't have room where you live, they have beds that are 4x8, 4x10, or 4x10, I believe it. Anyways, they have different sizes now because they've been rebuilding them. And I had an open house a couple of weeks ago, and I went down to see, because I used to be very active in the community garden. And you rent a bed. It's like, it used to be $20 a year. I believe it's like maybe now it's $30 a year, which really isn't that bad because that includes your water and everything. And then they do have seeds down there, so that are available. If you don't look for something special, if you just want to start and think, okay, let's deal with this down here, and then you just have to go down there all the time to deal with it. But yeah, and so that's a good thing, and it's a social thing. What we used to do, John Freeman, who has become the bee king here in the valley, he used to be, well, he's still very active with the community garden. And he and I and Dan Cease would be down there. And anybody that comes in, the there was a gardening club that had a flower garden in there for cut flowers. And they'd be down there all the time. So you meet people, and then you start talking to people. Oh, do you know about this? Oh, have you tried this? Oh, you've got to taste this melon. It's amazing. Oh, what is that? Oh, you've never tasted kohlrabi? Well, here, let's have some kohlrabi. And so it becomes a social thing, and you learn a lot. I mean, just the ways that people do things. Or the latest fad of, there was, for a while, square foot gardening was the thing. It's still around, and it can still be done. I don't work well with it because it's like, it's square foot, and you put one thing in each foot. And I had done that. Well, the problem is, some things get too big for 1 foot. And so they don't really take that effect, I think, when the guy was writing the book. But it's a good idea. And some people can make it really work. And you can, it gives you guidelines like radishes, you put them like, whatever, 2 inches apart or something, and you could fit 32 in a square foot or something, whatever it was. And then there's this Hugelhof. It's a way of composting things that they're doing now. So, and on the other side of the world, in Seattle, over there, they do a lot of rain gardens they put in, because they've got a lot of rain. We here have a lot of heat, and it'll be here soon enough. But so you deal with what you've got, and let's see. Stress and anxiety, yeah. You don't have, because it's not something. Usually, it's not a chore. Now, the weeds around the outside of the fence are a chore. The weeds in my neighbor's backyard are a chore. But that's not my problem. I'm going to deal with what's in my yard. Well, the stuff on the other side of the fence by the alley is my problem, but basically it's just a bunch of grass, and I've sprayed it, so, maybe it'll die. The stuff you want to die, that doesn't, and the stuff you want to grow, sometimes most of the time it does. You'll find that there's going to be one thing that you want to grow, and, well, it's like the cilantro, and it just doesn't work well. Potatoes, I was not going to grow potatoes because they take a little bit of room. And then one of the other gals had leftover potatoes from the school and said, here's some red potatoes. We planted them today at the school. Okay, fine. So I cut it in 4 pieces and I planted it. And that was like 3 or 4 years ago, and I've still got volunteers coming up. I dug up a lot of my yard to plant this garlic, and this year, I planted garlic in the fall last year after I had harvested potatoes. Well, guess what? I missed a couple, and now I have 4 potato plants coming up. So I'm going to have red potatoes and white potatoes, and, it's not a bad thing. It's potatoes. It's not a problem. Okay, starting a garden, start small. Don't overwhelm yourself. Because you just, like say, if you want to start in pots, that works. There's a lot of plants now that come, and they're called baby varieties, mini varieties, or patio plants. And you can grow those easier in pots on your patio, and it makes a nice addition to your patio, as well as providing something to munch on. I grow all my cucumbers in pots because they're easier to move around to get so that when they don't get enough sun, you can move them over. And then when it gets hotter than blazes, you can move them back over in the shade so they don't get so much sun. And so that's kind of the benefits of pots. These are big pots, and they are on wheels so that I can move them. Keeping in mind when you plant in pots that just putting soil in that pot is going to make the pot itself, you've got to figure that weight. So if it's ceramic, it's going to be heavy. And then if you fill it with soil, that's going to make it heavier. And then when you water it, it's going to be unmovable because it just won't go anywhere. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. Make sure it's got drainage, because even if it's in the ground, if you have clay, and some people have, especially if you're up in the heights, you'll have clay. Sometimes it's spotty so that you can work around it, and sometimes it's just obnoxious. You can, evidently they've got something down at Pat's now, a product that works with the clay to loosen it up. And one of the guys, I have not tried it because I live on the beach, so I have sand. Luckily, the people who owned the house years before were gardeners, and they have built up the soil, so I do have good soil. But the parts where they didn't, it's like sand. And but again, know what you're dealing with, and places to find answers to these would be plant clinics in Asotin, which we have on Wednesdays from the 1st of May through the middle of June. They're Wednesdays from 10 to 2 or 10 to 1. And if you have any questions, any plant problems, weed IDs, if you find a plant, you're not sure what it is, you can bring it in, we can tell you what it is. We are not experts. We do not have all the answers. What we have are resources to find the answers, so that if we can't find it through our resources, then we can send it to WSU and get them to give us their opinion on whatever it is. And we do that on a regular basis because we've had some real weird things come in. So,
Where's the plant clinic?
oh,
Where's that located?
it's the basement of the courthouse, at the extension office. I'm sorry. And then we do have a table at the farmer's market, and I don't think they're doing it every week. I think it's just the first and third. When I was doing it, it was the first and third. And they're on Thursday. They'll be on Thursday nights, Thursday evenings over in Beachview Park, from Thursday nights 5 to 9, I believe. And then in September, or when it gets hot, or September, it gets dark, it only goes till 8, I believe. So, and if you don't want to have a garden, that's a good place to get your produce. So, because it's mostly homegrown, and, you can ask if it's organic. Some of it is, some of it's not. Some might be certified organic, some of it might just be semi-organic. So, important, start small, find where you can get information. Check with your neighbors. Maybe your neighbor is a master gardener, or maybe your neighbor teaches botany over at LC or something. Check around and see who likes, if your parents garden, your grandparents garden. Those people know a lot. They've been around the block. They know what works, and they know what doesn't work. Now, again, with the vinegar, the salt, sprinkling cornstarch on your weeds, maybe not, but, again, you could try it if it doesn't sound poisonous. Actually, the stuff you buy, the preen that's the weed preventer, it's actually kind of like a cornmeal type thing. It's made out of, and it kind of builds that barrier to keep the weeds out. So it makes sense that maybe that would work. But and then when you buy plants, buy from local places. Now, Walmart is local, but where do they get their plants from? We're not always sure. But if they're cheap enough, it's like Home Depot loves to mark down the plants that are not well. I went up there one day, and they had the 6 packs of coleus, and they had been $6. They had been marked down to $2. Now, half of them looked like they were doing okay so far. They were going towards the light, but 3 of them were already like, oh my God, I took them home, of course, I bought some, and watered them, just watering them. The next morning, it was like, okay, there was only one that was still pretty much gone. I don't think it's coming back. But the other ones are all alive. So once they really get active and growing, they'll be fine. So, if it's cheap, it's, you get what you buy, you pay for it. But you can try it. Now, if you're buying a tree, if you're buying a plant, an ornamental plant, you want to make sure you're buying it from somebody that knows what they're doing. There's the places that have plants, the Pat's, of course, is excellent. Sometimes they're a little bit high priced. I found one the other day that I thought, that's gorgeous, I just love it. And then I looked at the price tag and it was $270. And I said, whoa, I don't like it that well. Holy cow, I didn't wanna, anyways, so, and you know what, don't buy the $40 plant if you don't know what you're doing with it, because you'll forget, you'll regret it. So if you buy from those places, you will notice there'll be tags. Okay, there's one that has a tag. And this will tell you all you need to know about the plant. All right, maybe not this one. And this will tell you, plant in full sun, 24 inches, 18 to 24 inches apart, in rows, 18 to 24 inches apart, and that's these little sweet peppers. Okay, that being said, and I didn't get my peppers, I got my peppers from the community garden plant sale. Oh my goodness, well, there we go. I'm gonna keep that. And I got the mini peppers, yellow, red, and orange. And I have them all about 8 inches apart. My pepper garden is what I call it, because that's where I put the peppers over here. And they've always done very well there. So, take it with a grain of salt. If you do them closer together, it probably won't be a disaster. If you have bug problems, it could be a problem or if you have fungus problems, mildew, things like that, if they're closer together and if you water them a lot, those will travel from plant to plant and it's not a good thing. So, know what you're growing. If you're buying a bigger plant, or like flowers, and it'll say full sun, shade, or so where to plant it. If you're looking for something for a special place, then you'll want to know, what you're dealing with. A lot of times, if you're looking for a tree, and a tree is a wonderful thing to plant because trees provide so much for us, besides making more oxygen and cleaning the air, and shade for our houses, places for our kids to play, places for us to sit underneath the tree and have a beer sometimes. A tree is never a bad idea. It will increase the value of your property if you plant a tree. Plant the right tree. If you always say, look up, see what lines are running through your yard. Don't plant, and this is a true story, the house that I moved into had a flowering plum tree in the backyard. And it was planted like right here, in the wire to the house for electrical went right here. And it was a small tree then. Well, that was 18 years ago, and now the tree is twice as tall as the house, and we've had to cut down just about all that side of the tree because they didn't want to. I cut around it for a while, but then we just had to say, hey. And at one point, we're going to have to take the damn thing out. But, at this point, it's still providing shade, and it's still doing its thing. So, but know how big things are going to get. It'll say, every tree comes with a little thing on it. similar to this, that'll say the shape of the tree as it gets mature, the height of the tree, the width of the tree. When I moved into my house, there were no trees in the front yard. And I have a window that is 4 feet tall and 10 feet wide. It's a big freaking window. So I went down to Pat's and I told Sharon, I want a tree for my front yard. These are my must-haves. And I said it must have leaves that are big enough to rake, because my old house had locust trees, and you can't rake locust. Yeah. If you've had them, you know. You can't rake them very well because they're so small. Then I said, and I don't want something that's going to be a mess, I don't want anything fruity. I want, the size I want, it's got to be at least 30 feet wide. It's, got to be this and that. Anyways, I had my whole list. And so then Sharon and I went through the tree book, and we made a few. I think I had a list of 10 trees that I liked. And so then I went home and I Googled up all these trees, and I narrowed it down to like 3 trees, went back down to Pat's. I live 2 blocks from Pat's, so it's not a big trip to go to Pat's. Thank goodness. So I went to Pat's and I said, okay, I've narrowed down to these 3 trees. What do you have? Okay, we've got this one, but we just got it. She is so bad. Oh, we just got this other one in. I think you're gonna like. It's like, okay, whatever. Let's go look at the trees. So I ended up with a flowering pear tree. I have to tell you, I really loved it because it was fairly fast growing, but it's not weak. Some trees that are fast growing have fragile limbs, or, they break off easily, which is another hazard you don't really want in your life. But this flowering plum tree I just love. Well, several years later, I was still doing something. We were talking. Sharon and I were talking, and I said, I just love my flowering plum. But I know it was the year we had like hellacious heat all summer, and when the tree started in the fall, instead of the little tiny berries that it usually produce, which are just little tiny, like crab apples, flowering crab apples will produce them. They're just tiny little, they're great for the birds love them, and the squirrels. But it was producing these little fruits like this, and they were soft and mushy. And they were all over my sidewalk. And every freaking person that came into my house, and I was having my floors redone then, trucked in all this gooey stuff. And I went down there and I said, if that tree does it again, it's out of here. And she said, so then she had checked with the tree growers, and she said that when they're stressed, and it's true of any flowering tree, they want to reproduce, and so they put out a little bit more seed type things. My flowering plum puts out now it's getting older, and it is getting close to the end, but it puts out these little berries that look like cherries, actually. They're not really plum size, but they're big enough that you don't want a whole lot of them, but it doesn't make a whole lot of them. I get maybe 2 or 3. So that I can deal with. But the pear tree, and then she says, and did you notice how bad they smell? She goes, I said, no, I wouldn't. Why didn't you tell me this before I bought it? And she said, no, they stink when they're flowering. Okay, well, it's like October, so I don't know. I have to wait till spring to find out if my tree is stinky. Now, I've had this tree for like 8 years. I don't know stinky from whatever. So when it blooms, it's gorgeous, because these flowering fruit trees really are spectacular in the spring. And although this spring she didn't do anything, but I had her pruned, and now she's doing weird things. But I went out there, and my neighbors must think I'm crazy, and I'm out there, and I'm sniffing all these flowers, and I'm thinking, still not smelling anything bad. I don't know what she's talking about. And I told her, I said, my tree doesn't stink. She goes, well, what variety do you have? How would I know? This was before I said, now I keep everything, and I have a drawer full of stuff where it's got all the information on every plant in my garden, pretty much. And so I still don't know what was supposed to be stinky about it, and it doesn't stink. But, evidently they can, but find out, and they don't have them anymore because of the stinkiness. So, but if you buy local, there's Home Depot, North 40, and North 40, the gal that's the manager up there is a master gardener over in Nez Perce County. So she kind of knows what to order. But I think Walmart, I'm not so sure. Walmart's just an iffy place, no matter what you buy. You can go there in your pajamas, so it doesn't matter, and it's close to where I live. So I can sneak down there in my pajamas at 6 o'clock in the morning and hope I don't run into anybody I know. So that's what I know about buying plants. It's okay. Now here's a sad tale here. The limits of growing a garden for mental health. There are some things you have to keep in mind. The mistakes that can be made. Too much sunlight or shade. And that happens to all. Sometimes it was a plant called a Virginia, again from Pat. And I had planted it under my elderberry, my black lace leaf elderberry. And it got shade, it got some morning sun, but other than that, and it never grew. It never put out leaves, it never bloomed. I found out later that, they bloom. Wow, that's nice. But it wouldn't die. It just lived, but it wasn't happy, you could tell. So finally, a couple of years ago, I thought, well, this is ridiculous. He's not happy there. She's going to move. So I moved her from one side of the yard to the other because the other side is the side that gets the shade from the fence pretty much all day. And it was kind of under my butterfly. But anyways, it was a good place for it. And I put it over there. I have divided it 4 times. I mean, I have 4 big plants down, at least 4, and they need to be divided again. And they bloom every spring. So what was the problem with the plant? Who knows? It just didn't like it where it was. Now, if they're in pots, you can easily move them. This was a small plant, so you can still easily move it. I have a hot poker plant, which was this big, and it wasn't happy where it was. It got too much shade. It needed a lot more sun. And so I thought, okay, fine. It needed to be divided anyway. So I'll just move it. So I dug up again a piece of the yard, right in the middle of the yard, and put in the hot poker plant. I'm gonna have somebody come and actually make this all organized this year because I have dug up massive spots here and there, and I have also where I'm supposed to have grass out past beginning of the shop, all became weeds this year. Now, the good news is I can identify now that I'm a master gardener and I've learned. That does me no help at all. Well, it does. It tells you what to use on every plant. But when you've got 20 different kinds of weeds and they're all thriving, you just start spraying. I mean, you just start spraying because, and I know some people are really averse to any kind of spraying, but there's sometimes you get to a point. I had puncher vine out in the south, and living at my neighbor, these new neighbors that are just very nice people, had a puncher vine. One came up last year, and I swear it was 8 feet wide, one plant, and it was coming through the fence into my yard, and they did nothing about it. And when there was a tree of heaven, another interesting species that you do not want to plant. It is, in fact, a noxious weed. They took out a big one in the alleyway, and so they're coming up everywhere. And it was coming right my fence, and I told him, I said, this tree is going to take the fence out if we don't get rid of it. Can I cut it down? And he said, oh, yeah, sure, anything that's coming through the fence. Well, whatever, I just went over and, I realized what I had done by the time I got back to the garage. and looked at the bottom of my feet. My shoes were covered in goat heads, puncher vine things. Well, I didn't walk any further. I took the shoes off and then disposed of all, pulled them all out and got rid of them. But that's going to be a mess this year, I think. And directly across the alley, I don't even know if anybody lives in that house. There's a lot of weeds in there. I mean, she had a rush skeleton weed that got this big, and I had tried to kill it several times. Because it is a noxious plant. It's very bad. So, anyways, another thing, overwatering or underwatering. How can you tell? There are actually a little meter thing, and it's got a little stick on it, and you just put the thing down in now it's not a tough thing to read. It says wet and it says dry. It's not rocket science, people. So, and they cost, I've seen them anywhere from like $4 to, I think I saw one that was $20, but you can get them around different places. Again, the China Mart has, I think they're $10. So, oh, we are running out of time. Okay, so that will help you with watering. Planting at the wrong time. Again, know what you're planting and maybe, read on the packet of seeds, or if you have a thing, or just know what you're planting so you'll know what to do with it. Okay, insects eating leaves or stalks, and I can't tell you how to deal with that because it depends on the insect, Animals getting past your fence. Okay, I think they're rabbits, deer. I live in the city now, so I don't have deer in my yard. However, we've had a herd go down the middle of the street. Had one little buck come up and look in the window at the cat one morning. They were chatting. But I don't really have a problem with that. But depending on the insects or the animals, again, ask somebody who knows, somebody at a garden store, or again, we're out in Stoughton. If it's not on a Wednesday morning, you can always call up there and leave a message, and then we can get back to you. And a lot of things now, since COVID, we do a lot of things electronically, so we can do email when you have problems. Take pictures if you have problems with anything. Take lots of pictures so we know what it's looking at. We ask you to bring samples in of whatever the thing is if you have problems, if you can. But pictures if you can't get in. And then too many weeds, and I do have that. I do keep the weeds out of where I've got things planted, and I'm working on the rest of it. That's all I can say. Incorrect soil type or quality, again, we discussed that, and not harvesting at the right time. That's kind of interesting because some things we plant, we just don't know, well, when is it right? I'm growing fennel, and my fennel finally bulbed up. Well, it overwintered, and it's about that big. I've never had it before. I haven't even eaten it, so I don't know what it's going to be like, but I think I need to harvest it now before it gets any bigger because I'm pretty sure. But things like garlic, things that grow in the ground, onions, when do you harvest? Just know those things. And again, ask your neighbors, ask your friend, if you have a friend with a green thumb, anything like that. And then, let's see. Okay, so that pretty much covers everything. Not everything, but what we can. Plant vegetables you like to eat. Start small. Add more as you feel comfortable until your whole yard is full of them. Take out the front lawn. Put in edible stuff. Okay, that's not on there. But you can do that. Look for the small bush type things to plant in your patio pots. If you end up getting the wrong thing, you can probably cut it back and keep it small if it's the right kind of thing, or it'll die. It'll outgrow the pot. You'll have to decide what to do with it. Direct seeding is cheaper, but buying starts can save time. So you have to kind of balance those things out. Herbs grown in smaller containers can easily be moved to the side during the winter months, so that you'll have herbs all year. And containers can be multiple, you can plant multiple times during the year, just like you would your garden. So that pretty much wraps up everything I had to say today. Anybody have any questions? We rattle on and on. And don't forget, plants here and flowers, you can have a pot and the veggies put in the ground.
Thank you so much, Aileen.
Thank you.
Yeah.